And you are listening to the United We Strike Radio Marathon of March 8th, 2014. I am Gary Hendershot, your producer, and at this time I'm going to turn it over to Matt Navarro to announce our roundtable discussion for the evening. Matt, it's all yours.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate your production abilities and participation in the UnitedWeStrike.com marathon. I'd like to also thank Detlef, our producer in Switzerland, and Alan, our producer in Ireland, for their work today, getting us on the air, keeping us on the air. Without their expertise and hard work, we would not be able to bring you this programming that we do, packed with full of good information. If you need to, if you're listening, you need to go back to the podcast of the ISAC Radio, Jesse Beltran and Lars Brugard. They had a great program today. So did Deborah Tavares. Dinah Everett-Snyder was wonderful. We have a lot of great guests and information that you can benefit from here on UnitedWeStrike.com's marathon. My program today, my guest was Sheriff Richard Mack. We'd like to thank him for his participation. And we may get to hear more from Sheriff Mack on a regular basis if all things go well. But I'd like to, for this evening, welcome you to our roundtable, which is the part that I guess most of our hosts look forward to now of our broadcast, because we get to share with each other of like minds our ideas, our thoughts about what's currently going on in the world. With us this evening, who did a great job just a segment ago, is Suzanne Polzel. Also joining us is Am Rosen, always clever and eloquent. Dinah Everett-Snyder, who is just an encyclopedia of information. And of course, our producer, Gary Hendershot. Now, we've in the past had our roundtable open for any topic, and I think we'll just keep that format here tonight. And then, we'll go around the table and share our thoughts about today. First, I'd like to thank Suzanne for a wonderful segment earlier about making rational choices versus emotional choices based on whatever it is we're being fed, fear mostly from the new world order. So let's open it up for a general discussion on things. We'll go with Suzanne first.
Oh, wow. Well, I kind of said everything on the segment. It's something that's really it's really resonated with me, especially with what's going on with the fake revolutions we see all over the world, and how good people are duped into doing things that end up being horribly terrible for them in the end. I think that we need to stop making bad decisions, and part of that is having really bad information in order to make those decisions, and the bad information is usually sensational and it causes you to have an emotional reaction. So I'd like to find out from the panel, if anyone's interested, what their take on it is, emotional reactions as opposed to logical decisions.
Am, I would think you jumped right on that.
Thank you. And hi Susan, I was really enjoying what you were saying today. Emotions are thought feelings. Feelings are how you respond. So whatever occurs to you in the moment stimulates your awareness. You have some level of response. Most people don't know why they respond the way they do. When nothing's going on, but you're sitting around thinking, suppose this happened or this didn't happen, and you're getting all worked up, you're attaching old feelings to thought patterns, because this is part of how you give yourself credence. It must be true, because look how deeply I feel, but you're not feeling. You're whacking out the body and getting all burnt out. When a lot of the advertising, whether it's political or to sell your products, comes out, I think it was Gary that mentioned, well, don't they know this? You mean that this doesn't work? But you see, these things are not aimed at the rational mind, where you go, oh, they're just trying to sell me something. They are aimed at the irrational subconscious, where regardless of what you tell yourself, you feel afraid, you feel inadequate. And the guy says, well, if you sprayed my body with this stuff, the girls would love me. You know that's nonsense. But you need to distract yourself away. Well, maybe, okay, but you didn't use the right designer label from the right product. All right, maybe next time. because we're trying to placate fears that have been passed down, which we should have outgrown a long time ago. And in terms of that, when I was trying to understand exactly what was going on with the human condition and later develop a step-by-step process that I thought could rectify, straighten out. In other words, give people complete access and let them feel comfortable. One of the things after breaking the grip of the subconscious was, okay, you're free. You can do anything you want, except everything you've learned to do has been in relation to where you felt irrationally compelled to respond before. So from force of habit, for lack of a better way to go, you'll keep repeating these things, except now with more intensity because you're freer to do that. So repatterning is, how do you identify anything that comes up for you, whatever the subject, health, intersocial relationships, politics, whatever it is, trace it back down through the years you've overlaid it with intellectual structure, cultural identity, sophistication. But there was a place where you locked into that pattern. See it, break its automatic grip, so that the next time you're thrown off kilter, maybe you become too tired or too frustrated, whatever it is, instead of reverting to the original pattern, you now revert to the updated, refined pattern, not just as an idea. Yeah, I'd rather be like this, but when you're too tired to hold yourself up and discipline yourself through ideas. And you keep adapting that as you get better insight and understanding till you've reached a place that's comfortable and dynamic. One step beyond that is reprogramming. It's the fourth step in what I call the process. Once your feelings are malleable and open to your intellect, most people, in defense of all the negative feelings they have, the guilt, the shame, the fear, all that stuff, have through the years tried to fortify themselves. They've barricaded themselves into mental processes that may be brilliant, but they're usually set up as anti-negative thought feelings. It's not that I'm not adequate, and you call that being adequate. It's not that I'm not a good person, and you call that. But once the feelings are there, these anti-negative thought processes are, again, keep holding you down. So how do you put whatever you want in your intellect, whether it's for 2 seconds or 20 years, and change it anytime you get better information, not just as an intellectual idea, but something that actually registers through your feelings, your body, and brings you to alignment. I'm talking about, you can't push the buttons if you grab hold of the buttons and take them out. You know, if something comes in that can affect you, then you have to say, where am I susceptible? Just some thoughts.
I think people can be inspired to break out of their comfort zone, as you tried to describe for us. People from fear of whatever it is, a lack of being a part of a group, or fear of being someone that is looked out as being a rogue or maverick. They don't want to be seen as that. So they contract into their comfort zone and are comfortable there and want to stay there out of fear. And I think it is up to people like us, like you, Am, Suzanne, to inspire others to step out of that comfort zone so that they don't keep doing the same steps of their programming.
You call it a comfort zone. I call it an avoidance zone, where you've actually capitulated and you're trying to hold up a defensive posture. But the fear, you have to understand, we're not just running out there in nature. We've developed the intellect. And the intellect, we position ourselves by our idea of itself. I'm this person, I can do this, I've learned that, I've been through that. But the intellect works through duality. You want to be happy, you want to be safe, you want to be secure. That means you're not that. You start to think of what it would take. You attach emotions because you want your thoughts to be juicy. Until you're out there, you're one of God's right-hand chosen people. But that possibility, which to you has come to represent happiness, is off in the distance. Do you have what it takes to get there? Are there monsters or villains waiting to attack you? But no matter how vibrant or desirable the thought, you can't hold it forever. And then your mind turns the other way. If you could think about how happy you could be from a place of not being fulfilled or happy, you can also think, suppose I not only can't get to be that, but I lose what I have. Suppose I become weakened and sick and destitute and I'm being abused, and wow, that's misery. And you're not just thinking it, you're thinking it emotionally because wow, my pain, my suffering. And you keep going back and forth, and the body, until you reach a level where you can say, hey, body, don't react to this, goes along for the ride. And so getting people, it's not to get them out of their comfort zone. I don't think they are comfortable. It's to make them more secure so they can actually feel comfortable, so they're not afraid to act, so that they can come forward as much as they like, whenever they like, or pull back and regroup. And most people right now don't know how to do that.
That's an interesting contrast that you paint. Dinah, your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a lot that they both say that I truly agree with, and it goes back to what I talk about quite a bit on my show, which is this whole paradigm of prosperity versus scarcity, where we've been led to believe that we live in this futuristic world of perpetual motion and drive towards progress, and we're inundated from all sides we're told to believe that this paradigm of prosperity is good for us, that we need to be driven to be more and better and have more and own more and achieve more, and we're told that we're entitled to it, and all along these lines of being so heavily driven, when the reality is that the more we are driven on this path, the more scarce our life becomes. We're told how to think and how to behave. We're told that we're not qualified to count our own money. We need an accountant. We're not qualified to know when we don't feel well, to identify the illness or the bad thoughts or the sad thoughts or the depression or any of the feelings that we have. We're told that we need to see an expert, a specialist, so we see a doctor and we see a therapist, we see a psychologist, we go and see health specialists, we take our children to all of these people. We don't barely do our own yards. Everyone has landscapers because, God forbid, we can't make a decision on where to put a plant. And so what happens, and what I see with my patients and my clients is where they have really painted themselves into a corner, and society has put people into these corners, into this incredibly small box where people have become truly paralyzed with fear that they're not going to make the right decision. So you look at all the self-help books and you look at the titles of all of these books. They're really about, in a nutshell, knowing yourself, finding your own identity. And that's kind of where Am is coming from, I think, is, people don't stop. They don't stop and think, who am I? What do I want? What do I need? Not what am I told to want? What am I expected to need? What did I need before? Why didn't it fulfill me? And why do I think I need something different now? You don't have to ask any of those questions. And you don't even have to, people often say, well, I don't know what I want. And then I say to them, well, let's talk about what it is that you don't want. Because in the process of elimination, there are answers too. So unfortunately, I didn't listen to Suzanne's podcast, Life Calls, and I was running around crazy. But I'll give you an example, a very real life example. I have parents with autistic children that end up at my door when they have exhausted all their other options. And if you have good health care, of course, there are lots of options for places to take your children, your autistic children. And these parents are handed off from one supposed expert to another, from behavioral specialists to dietitians to the next behavioral specialist to the gut specialist. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's co-pays and it's endless bills from insurance companies and endless bills from different doctors. And when these parents end up at my door, they 9.5 times out of 10, when we go through the litany of things that they've done over the years, because by now they've spent between 2 and 6 or 7 years even exhausting all their options, as it were, in the mainstream. And when we look at it, and I ask them to write it all out, and then they come back with this huge list, and they're always incredibly shocked at exactly how much of a runaround they've experienced. And they kind of shake their heads, and they look a little flabbergasted, and they say, I knew it was a lot, and I knew that I was doing all this, but I never really realized how much until I had to write it all down on a piece of paper. And I'm struck by, these parents say that they are struck by the fact that at a very distant point towards the beginning of their runaround, they knew that it was hopeless, that they were not getting the answers that they were looking for, and that there was no positive outcome for their children. But they were expected to keep doing the runaround by the medical society, by their family, by their spouses, and by their own internal feelings of obligation. But that they all will point to some point high on the list, way up there from years before, where they felt that what they were doing was a waste of time, and how everything that came after has shown that it was a waste of time, and yet they continued on the same path, knowing that it was a waste of time because of fear of not doing it and of being judged accordingly for various reasons by various people in their inner circle. And I think it's to that we talk, really.
You're talking about the fear.
Fear, yes, this fear and expectation, and being painted into a box that is very paralyzing and incredibly self-limiting.
Indeed, we are controlled by our fears. We're taught at the very earliest stages of life. Fear is how we associate our world. If you were raised in a Christian environment, which a good majority of the Northern Hemisphere is, and a good part of the Southern Hemisphere, your fear is of God. If you make God angry, you shall forever, once you die, live in this boiling lava pit of hell, and you will never get to see anything good henceforth. So at the earliest ages, we're taught this fear. Gary, you have no fear. You live right in the middle of the den of the New Old Order. What are your thoughts on fear and our programming?
Oh, excuse me. I'm a little scared of the mouse. Fear. Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with maturity. When you're young, you're afraid of offending your parents. Let's face it, most kids grow up, you don't want to make your parents mad at you. You try hard. If you're going to do something naughty, you try and be sneaky about it so your parents don't get you. Because, you have a certain fear that, you're going to disappoint mom and dad. They're going to, lock you up in your room for a month or whatever, And then, you go to school and you're afraid of the teacher. You don't want to disappoint the teacher. You want to make sure you get good grades. So I think it starts early in life. We train from a very, very early age. We train our children to be afraid. We don't teach them to try something maybe a little risky. We don't teach them to take risks. And yet, the way the United States, at least, was intended to be was it was intended to reward those who are willing to take risks. So, we've got this system set up where the greatest rewards are available to those who are willing to take risks, people who are willing to face failure and pick themselves up and persevere and try it again. Those people become our heroes. Those people become our leaders. Those people become, the insanely wealthy people in our society. And yet, from a very, very early age, we teach our children to be afraid to take on challenges and to take risks. So, that dichotomy has always kind of puzzled me a bit. I wish I could say that, nothing ever scares me, but I'd be lying. Of course I know fear, and I've had all the fears I mentioned. Fear of disappointing my parents, fear of disappointing instructors in school, fear of disappointing other members of my family. Nobody gets a how-to book when they have children. So there was, when I was raising children, there was this fear that I might make some stupid mistake, in my child rearing. We all face fear, and I think maturity plays into it when you recognize that, not only am I afraid, but that is a logical and reasonable fear. Being afraid is just a natural reaction. Being afraid is perfectly normal. Heroes work through their fear. They're just as scared as anybody else out there. But, they accept the fact that they're afraid, and they persevere through their fear. Regardless, they do what's right, even when it's hurtful, even when it hurts them. They do what's right. Not because they want to avoid the fear, but because they know that even when it's hard, you're supposed to do what's right. So, fear, bring it on. I'll take it as best I can. Sometimes I'll win, sometimes I'll lose.
I think you sum up very well, Gary, the type of people that are participants in the UnitedWeStrike.com radio marathon. Everyone here at the Roundtable included, but it's people who are willing to look beyond their personal fear and make sacrifices, in this case, our time, our reputation, and in the case of the NDAA, our well-being, perhaps, and scrutiny by the government, because we are willing to get beyond that fear so we can do the right thing, which is inform our fellow citizens, our fellow human beings about what is really going on in this world, to help them make better decisions so that they can overcome their own fears.
Fear is a containment field. Fear shuts you down. It makes you back away. Fear is always based in irrationality. What you're talking about is when you can make sense out of an emotion, then you start to gain control. But you're still tied into the feeling that engendered the emotion. What I want to say is everything you said is a beautiful description of where people have been stuck for a long time. But it's not that hard to eliminate this mechanism. You can replace fear with caution. There's something to be concerned with here. There's reasonable danger. But the fear that people face is when they start, they can't help themselves, kind of emotionally masturbating scenarios in their mind, where suppose this happens or this doesn't happen, and they get themselves worked up. But the reason, ready or not, children grow up to where they can biologically bring into the world other children. It doesn't mean that they're emotionally, mentally, or spiritually prepared to do the same thing. What we do to ourselves, if we can be shut down and live in fear, we'll certainly do to someone else. Somebody mentioned the fear of God. The ultimate archetype of the fear of God is imaged as the devil. So if somebody's put the fear of God in you, they put the devil in you. And once they get that soul sucker in you, you'll do just about anything to, I'll be good, to get rid of him. But all of this is primitive circuitry that is so, it's the discrepancy between what we're talking about reasonably and logically and these processes that have people by the short hairs, it's driving people crazy. I'm aware of people's vulnerability and that they've been backing away, that they're unhappy and they're willing to live secondary lives rather than face their fears. So when I'm working with someone, the first things I tell them, but I don't just tell them, they can feel it, is that I won't expose you to these things unless I have the skill and the technique to help you quickly and efficiently resolve them once and for all. I'm not going to rub your face in your fear. You know it's there. I want to get you through the circuitry so you regain control of it. And that's what I'd like to see for everybody. Gary says, well, let's be reasonable. I have my fears. And I would say you have your cautions. You're intelligent. And with that, Gary, going through a lot, you talked about maturity. The whole system is based on you get born, you grow up, you get educated, you get fit into the workplace, maybe you have a family. That's all part of the reproductive process to keep a workforce in line and repopulating. All of a sudden you're past that. A lot of the conditioning that was set up to keep you there is no longer relevant. But people used to die a lot sooner. So all of a sudden we have a class of people who are vital, have life experience, and aren't so susceptible to that conditioning which was aimed at a particular aspect of their life, saying, wait a minute now, that's not necessarily so.
I would like to expound on that because emotions are also habits, and habits are learned. So the best part about that is, if you learned how to do it, you can unlearn it. And one of the best ways that Am mentioned was to replace it. Work your way up to positive self-esteem. Work your way up to self-respect. If you have to get there baby stepping, that's fine. But you're reworking the neural net. The relationships in your brain have to be severed and new relationships have to be made. So when you are triggered by a memory or a song or a feeling, which is corresponding to a thought, which is corresponding to a memory, if you rewire all of these things by unlearning these ways in which we react to people, places, things, events, etc., we can consciously start to rewire our brain and work our way into making decisions for ourselves that reflect our self-respect and our self-esteem, which extends not only to ourselves, but then to our immediate family and our community and so on and so forth.
Well, the world doesn't need more neurotic, suffering, miserable people. It needs people who are really clear and comfortable in themselves. They can change the course of things, and people need to know that's available. A lot of people talk ideals. I've seen it over and over again, and they'll get people revved up. And though people don't understand that they're really sensitive to feelings, and there's this, yeah, you're saying it, but I don't see it. Well, okay, I want to conform because I want to be part of the flow. We need people who are self-actualized, who have control of the nervous system, not repression, not avoidance, but can clearly move in and out and expand these parameters so that people can feel that, yeah, this is truly possible. When you hear a singer and a lot of people can transcend their limitations through an art form. That also creates a really hard discrepancy for them. But for a moment, they can bring the circuits online, and in that, you hear a purity, you hear a vibrancy, an emotional truth, and you can relate to that. If it wasn't in you, you couldn't relate to it in someone else. But then once you've been touched by it, and you remember it, as Susan said, well, then you're haunted by it. And the discrepancy between what you know is possible, because once you've tasted it, it's available to your nervous system, and where you feel stuck drives people crazy. Because if you're asking them to open up, you're asking them first and foremost to encounter the blockages in them that have so terrified them that they've been willing to shut down and avoid them all their lives.
Where do you find these people, Am? How do you get people away from Facebook, Netflix, their TVs, their smartphones? How do you pull people out of that matrix in order to allow themselves to discover how wonderful life can be free of fear?
Well, health is seductive, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental. If I can introduce you into a better state of being, better state of mind, not just momentarily, once you won't be able to settle for less. But I guess one of the things I decided a long time ago is just going to have to make it so beautiful, so delicious that they can't stand not to have some of it. something that makes it worth their while, but also at the same time give them a way, if, as these confusions that we've demonized in our subconscious come up, to quickly disperse them. We've got better things to do than to keep going around fighting old things, and fighting them just attaches you to them. That we want to move ahead into more expansive, inclusive, integrated states of awareness in every aspect of human society. But as you do that, what's in the way, it may have worked for you at some time, but it may no longer be appropriate. It may never have been appropriate. They come up. And this is what you're attached to. This is how you identify yourself. There has to be some understanding and knowledge, actual technique, not stuff you believe in. I don't want people to believe. I want people to come to understand that they can access, so they feel they can gain access and feel more comfortable and secure. But you've got to give them that. If not, they're going to say, "Oh, you're special. You got something," but because they're scared. And we've got to show them there's a better, much more satisfying, fulfilling way to be, so that they can come into the midst of social interaction because they want to be there, not because they can be herded and neurolinguistically programmed. I like to teach people how to be invulnerable to all that nonsense so they can take it in. Interesting, I see what you're doing, but respond according to what really makes sense to them. And if they don't know how to make sense, feel comfortable enough to admit, well, I don't understand it yet. Well, let's see what's going on.
In the interest of educating our audience, I would like to ask Suzanne and Dinah, who have small children currently in their household that they're raising. Our listeners out there may be thinking, well, how does this apply to me? How do I get there where I'm comfortable? How is it, Dinah or Suzanne, both of you, that you're teaching your children to be more independent of the programming that influences our lives?
Suzanne, let's say it together. Homeschooling.
Homeschooling, absolutely. My son is teaching our daughter. We'll watch on YouTube, and you have to click through the advertisement, and my son just rolls his eyes and say, "Oh, they just want me to buy something stupid." And my daughter's 3, so she just repeats what her older brother says. But what he's saying is good, and so that programming, I actually applaud. The reason why we brush with non-fluorinated toothpaste, my son explains to his little sister. And so he thinks consciously, not based on his emotional response, but whether or not this item, this thought, this group, this idea, this product, this person is good for me, if it benefits me, if it keeps me out of the addictive personality disorder that I have low self-esteem, I need this in order to survive, it defines me, without it I'm nothing. We need people like that. So homeschooling facilitates that. So get your kid out of the schools. Even if it's in college, it's not too late. Pull them out.
Yeah, absolutely. Suzanne and I talk about this a lot. So we just basically would be mimicking each other in that sense. I mean, homeschooling really, because when your kids are in a regular school, you have to constantly be on whatever it is that they're being supposedly taught academically at school, because so much of it is wrong anyway, and the approach is wrong, and there's the influences of all the other children that you have to counter. I always say that a child's age of innocence ends the day that they start kindergarten, because you lose control over what they're exposed to. And I'm not a control freak by any means. My children have lots of friends, and some of their friends are in regular school, but it's different when the friends are coming over to your home and you can listen, and those friends are coming to your home and hearing and being exposed to the things in your home. So my house happens to be like a pit stop for lots of children, too many sometimes. And my kids love to tell them all about all the things that they've learned at home. And the other children like to come here because we have a microscope, we have a greenhouse, we have ducks, we have all these things that they don't have any exposure to. I mean, there's no microscopes in school. They don't talk about these things at school. And children really, I mean, you hear this a lot. Children are little sponges, and they really are, and they want to learn. They want to ask questions, and they are very accepting of very simple explanations, which most of life is, especially for a child. Looking through a microscope at pond water, going on the walk to collect the pond water, and all the things that you talk about on the way are very reality-based, as opposed to the high school kid who gets out of high school, who's had a job for 2 years and been attending school, and they still don't know how to budget a checkbook. They still don't know how to fill out a lease application. All these things that we know inevitably they're going to be doing the second they're out of high school, and they are not clued in at all. Never mind the practicalities of, the ingredients in the food that they eat, their food choices, the toothpaste that they brush with, none of that stuff. I mean, just the real life skills. They don't teach any of this at school. So for some years, I was actually volunteering at two different high schools, helping 12th graders to understand how to balance a checkbook, what a credit card really means. You have no idea how many children, and therefore how many adults, do not know that a credit card is borrowed money, and what the interest is, and how hard it is to pay all that back. They don't know the difference between a debit card and a credit card. But we're about to, open the door and boot these kids out into the world, and then, cluck and put our hands on our hips when they fall flat on their face because they don't understand any of this stuff. So if we can't teach them the basics, the mechanics of living through all of the school system, then what? And then the next question is, what are we teaching them at school? Well, school is a repetition of the same shit in a different format, year after year after year after year. And what a waste of a childhood. They have to get up early in the morning, get dressed and rush off to school, and then get home tired, have to do homework, don't get to experience much of family life, can't go away on vacation because it's school time. Then everyone's off over the summer. The whole thing is ridiculous. It's absolutely and utterly ridiculous, and frankly quite barbaric.
Well, it's indoctrination is what it is.
Yes,
they want your child for that amount of time for the indoctrination, and now they want your child to eat exactly the GMO foods and chemical additives that they want you to eat by not allowing you to pack your lunch or your kids a lunch, even though it's 10 times healthier than the one that they're serving in the school with all the GMOs. It's indoctrination. And the answer, and you two ladies are brilliant, is that homeschooling is the answer, whether it is for your child or for yourself. Each individual is responsible for educating themselves outside of the matrix media, as Detlef calls it, or the corporate controlled media. I recently returned from vacation. I spent a week in Hawaii, and I didn't have access to the internet. So I was forced to endure mainstream or corporate controlled news, and it was sickening to me to have to observe this propaganda and garbage that folks are being fed through the television, through this corporate controlled state run media that they're exposed to. So it is up to us to inspire others to investigate and educate themselves, homeschool, if you will, themselves, so that they can make better decisions for themselves and their families. And I would encourage everyone, once you learn these things, don't just trust us here on the radio or other folks you hear on the radio. Do your own homework. And once you find this information out that you feel is beneficial for you and your family, then go tell others. Help inspire them so that they can resist the New World Order, because to do anything less on a global scale means the extermination of humanity, or at least 80 to 90% of humanity. Now think about that. 8 to 9% people that you can think of off the top of your head, straight off, name them 1 through 10, will be gone if the New World Order has their way. They will not exist anymore. They will be dead, okay? And they're doing that through all the things we talk about on our shows. You know, the chemtrails, the Fukushima radiation, the fluoride, the vaccine, all of it. So, you know, homeschooling yourself and your family, I think, is the answer. So, bravo, ladies.
I also want to give something for people to chew on, because groupthink and crowd psychology is a mechanism by which we are all susceptible to. But we need to keep in mind, Gustave Le Bon, who wrote crowd psychology, who was the inspiration for Sigmund Freud and Edward Bernays, he said that crowds were a force of destruction as evidenced by the morality and cognitive abilities of the crowds that were dependent on the least capable members, which means that the guy in the crowd who jumps up on top of the nearest hood of a car and starts screaming for everybody to go his direction, he's not necessarily the most capable person to take that job. He's inspired by the crowd think in order to get the new consciousness, which is all of the individual people who make up that new organism called a crowd, to go and do something. And it's usually something that under any other circumstance they would not do. And crowds, everyone forms crowds. We all form crowds. We form groups. If we're conscious in our decisions and not taking the emotional stance and reacting to anything, we can join crowds, we can join groups, we can watch mainstream television. And for me personally, I laugh. It's not because to me it's absolutely ridiculous. It's an insult to any level of intelligence, most of the garbage that's on the television, and then the rest of it is just, oh dear Lord, I cannot believe that they said that. But if we are reacting emotionally and we live our lives based on emotion, we're going to be suckered into and become victim of that phenomenon of crowds that Gustave Le Bon warned about.
You know, it just a lot of you're bringing up a lot of good points, and depending, like, whatever, whether it's homeschooling or public schooling, it still comes down to the quality of the person that's doing the educating, not indoctrinating. Education should be the facilitation, but that requires the educator to be aware of what the needs are and how that the person under their tutelage is geared to react. It's like a part of the art of health, which involves individual application. You're not adjusting people to some mass statistical social norm. You're saying, according to who you are, how your orientation is, your temperament, the way you've been exposed, the environment you need to fit in, what's the best way to facilitate your awareness, your comfort level. I think it's great for an intelligent person to try to convey and get kids to look at things, but they also have to learn to operate in the pressure group of social interaction, where kids who can be mean-spirited because they're insecure will act out. I had a lot of personal experience with that in 1969, 70, 71, and 74. I actually helped take on and develop some pilot projects for a lot of problem kids. But I was also in situations where the kids were riotous. I never had a problem calming down because I treated them as people who were confused but wanted to understand. Kids are very sensitive. You come in, well, I'm the teacher, or I've got the credentials. They'll know if you're uptight, or all you're going to do is blab a lot of stuff that you've been taught. But if they see that you can make sense out of what you're saying and teach them how to apply it to their circumstance, because they're trying to learn to identify themselves. They've got all this pressure. They've got all this hormonal flow. They've got all this bad information, and there's a desire to find identity among the group. So part of it is teaching kids to be comfortable enough and secure enough to be able to go into any group and not get sucked in. But that requires developing the rational mind in kids and teaching them how to take apart. Well, look at this nonsense on TV. Well, why do you think they put it out that way? What are they trying to achieve? What are they trying to show? What do you think of this? Getting them to look, and a lot of times they won't know. Say, that's interesting. Okay, so you're seeing things, you don't understand what you're seeing. To give kids a chance to reason, we don't do that.
Well, I think Suzanne's point of groupthink is right on target because, in history, it's been shown charismatic people who stand on the hoods of the car can motivate a group one way or the other. You look at Hitler, and you can see how he forced or was able to entice an entire population to doing things that they would not normally have done in a rational state of mind. But he was so eloquent and emotionally passionate, he swayed their opinions. So we can see how groupthink works in a bad direction, or we can look at what Gandhi may have done in India for the opposite. I just like to applaud the people who participate here at UnitedWeStrike.com. Everyone from Detlef to Dinah to Suzanne, Lars, everyone, for being people willing to jump up on hoods of cars. I just hope we're on the right hood.
Addictions.
Go ahead.
If you have an addictive personality, it's not necessarily a bad thing. If you are addicted to healthy things and you're addicted to good ways of living and good positive ways of thinking, that's a good addiction to foster. If you are a gambler and you think that every time you sit at the table you have a near win, then you have a problem. And so we need to just differentiate between what's going on. We're not immune to this. It's affecting everyone. The marketing and the selling and the mind manipulation, it affects everyone. No one's immune to it. Some people recognize it, step back, think about it rationally, and then move forward with informed decisions. Other people react. So the choice then becomes, do you want to react or do you want to make an informed decision? And that's your choice.
Well, you mentioned addiction, and the basis of addiction is trying to distract yourself through stimulation, distraction, away from picking on yourself. I don't think a person can be addicted to intelligence or a healthier way of living. I think that has to become a positive choice because it involves looking at the best way to be. If you are sitting among friends and everybody has a glass of wine in front of them and somebody raises a toast and say, hey, here's to friendship, to life, to the good things, salute, that's nectar in your body. But if you have low self-esteem and you don't understand why, you're irrationally hounding yourself and you just can't stand it anymore, you want to get away, and you swallow that same wine, it's poison in your liver. So where we're coming from is instead of escaping from things we can handle, which is the basis of addiction, whether it's sex, movies, or anything else, drugs, is to recognize that if it comes up, I don't know how to handle it, it's causing me pain, I better figure it out. But a lot of people don't know how to do that. The pain just increases and intensifies. And I think what we're all trying to convey to the public is that there is better, more fulfilling, easier ways to handle this morass of mixed emotions that make people so susceptible to manipulation.
In the words of Robert Palmer, I think we all should be addicted to love. And I think that's the key here. We should all be coming from a place of love in our delivery, in our thoughts, and in our actions. We're getting towards the end of our show, and this has been a wonderful, again, these roundtables are so interesting for me to listen to. And it is always tickles me to be able to chat with such intelligent and enlightened folks. It makes me feel very humble, as Am was talking about earlier in his show with Dean. But Am, since you had the last closing words there, let's go around the table and get everyone's closing thoughts and give us your websites and radio shows. What are your closing thoughts for this month's marathon, Am?
Closing thoughts. It's more of a continuation. We're just getting started. And the first thing we're letting people do is know that there is a problem and there are solutions. and they can be applied. We have to make people aware of that. So I don't consider this a closing thought. I consider this just a pause in a continuation. But it is a pleasure for me, too, to be able to participate with all of you. Intelligence is such a turn on. In terms of being addicted to love, love, as Gibran said, love, if it finds you worthy, directs your course. You don't dictate to love. Of course, a lot of people tend to confuse emotional fixation with love. Love always lifts you up and makes you feel expansive. So in the sense of fulfilling human potential, the essential dharma, fulfillment of your own unique individual potential, that's the meta-gravity of love. That's where it's drawing you to. And thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts with all of you.
Thanks. And your website?
Oh, my website, thank you. Yes, www.lifegame.com. You'll find archives of, we do a show on Wolf Spirit Radio with my friend Dean Lloyd, Dr. Lloyd. State of mind, quality of life. You'll also find some, still putting them up, Evolving the Species. It's a table discussion we have on GCN with a guest, with Dr. Lorraine Hurley, Dean Lloyd, and myself, and whatever guests we have on that's topical, and we try to look at that. And, of course, the pleasure of being on the UWS Marathon. You'll find a lot of stuff on my website, podcasts, a description of the Geigers, which can really save you a lot of aggravation. The process I've outlined, which I think could really evolutionize what's going on right now, and some excerpts from my two most recent books. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate your participation as always, and always so eloquent, Am. And your thoughts are very insightful.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Suzanne, I'd like to thank you for your participation as well. I really like the intelligence you bring to the show. You really have a good rational head on your shoulders. What are your continuing or closing thoughts for this month's marathon?
I'm just honored and humbled to be in all of your presence, because to be among such intelligent people who really are affecting change in their world. I did an interview with Dinah, and everyone, we put it up on the U.S. Independent. That's the news agency that I've started for independent media. And Dinah, everyone absolutely loved the interview, because you spoke about the humanity and the compassion that is lacking with our veterans, and how they're hurting inside, and how they can't talk about it to the extent where they lie on their deathbed and speak to you about it instead of their family members, which are the people that needed to hear it. And my website is occupycorporatism.com. It's a news, daily headline news website, 6 days a week. I need to take one day off, so Sunday. I've also got some incredible projects in the background, so look out for some things that will be coming out early next year or late this year from the U.S. Independent and occupycorporatism.com.
Thank you, Suzanne. I will look forward to your participation again next month. You add such a great deal for our audience, and you really help bring credibility to this whole effort. All of us here, we play our little parts. We have our little roles within the bigger picture of the marathon, and I really like your participation. Mentioning Dinah, though, Dinah, it is always nice to hear your voice. You missed last month's roundtable, and the one before that, I think, because of some bird accident issues. But it's always a pleasure to have you on and hear your accent, which still has an appeal to me. What are your thoughts for this month's marathon, and how do we hear more of you?
And I agree with Em. It's not a closing argument; it's a continuation. And we all, in our individual programs and in our lives, this is the way we live and the way we conduct ourselves. And so, we have these marathons once a month, but it's not a closing; it's a continuation. And I honestly wish there were more of them, because I've brought more people to these monthly things, and it's a pleasure for listeners to be able to come to one place and hear all the different speakers speak. So I really do want to thank everyone as well for being willing to, come together monthly and put our hearts out there, because the feedback that I've had certainly is incredibly appreciative, and that makes me appreciative of all of you. And Susanna, I want to thank you. I mean, we had a great interview. I haven't seen it. I haven't listened to it. I've been a little absent. We've had lots of things going on with our veterans here in California. They are being targeted, most specifically by the police departments, and targeted merely for the fact that they are veterans, and the fact that they have licensed firearms in their homes. And so for that reason, we have multiple veterans that are leaving the state of California, which is sad for the state of California and for my little groups. But I think it's best for them. And there are significant groups of them around the country. Of course, we have millions of veterans in this country, and they are all feeling rather vulnerable and isolated, which is sad. But more and more, I talk about the fact that everything that we have seen happen to our veterans in the past are things that are increasingly going to be happening to us all as a general population as the days, weeks, months, and coming years unfold. So I think my continuing thought till the next marathon would have to be to encourage people to let go of labels. Let go of the labels that you give yourself, and let go of the labels that you give to other people, and to read labels and understand what they mean. And in that, the internet is your greatest friend. So Matt, thank you very much. And Gary, thank you so much for always being there and putting these shows together. And my shows are on Wide Awake News. I have a permanent show there on Tuesday evenings. And then Sundays, I have Canary Chronicles, which is on ucy.tv.
Thanks, Dinah. We really appreciate the information you bring to our audience. I liked hearing about the foods this week on your show, or this month on your show, and I'd like to talk to you offline about another appearance on my show, because you just are a wealth of information, and I would like to provide another platform for you to share that with our audiences so that they can help make better decisions for themselves and their family. Gary's the man behind the scenes running all the switches and the dials and has his own radio program. Your thoughts for this month?
Well, I want to thank everybody for being patient as I pushed wrong buttons most of the afternoon, but hey, it's sometimes happens to you. But yeah, sitting here just 12 miles south of Washington, D.C., talking to everybody, you listen to everybody talk about how, all this high intellects out there, and I typically play an old country boy with straw for brains. That's the character that I put out there. But I too have an hour on the Wide Awake News broadcasts. It's 8 o'clock p.m. Monday evenings on the Rents Radio Network. And I do my little bit. I play that old country boy with straw for brains, trying to make sense out of topical news items of the day. It seems to have a pretty good following. It seems to get pretty good response to it. I think a lot of people identify with the fact that, it's so easy to become overwhelmed by all the complex issues out there, when in reality, it's just meant to divide us and conquer us, to try to stratify people, try to get, this one talking about that conspiracy theory and the other one talking about some other conspiracy theory, rather than getting us together to consider where we have common ground. And I hope that's what the United We Strike broadcasts do. I hope that presents a bit of diversity out there, where people who come at this from many different points of view can indeed participate and agree that we can come together, even given our differences, to confront the challenges that we all need to be looking at. And on that, I think I've said my piece.
Thank you, Gary. I agree with you the New World Order's agenda is to balkanize us, to keep us at each other's throat, so we don't see the man behind the green curtain, and that we have a global organization, United We Strike, that we have a global effort to educate and inform our fellow citizens so that we can, in concert on a global scale, resist with non-compliance of the New World Order is what we try to achieve here. And we have this global effort, this international effort to do so. We may be small in comparison to our listenership to other major independent media, but that's okay. My thought is always this: if we only reach one person today, that's okay. That person could be the one that goes and inspires another 100,000 people, who then would inspire another 100,000. You might look at it from the Amway perspective, if you are familiar with multi-level marketing. But that's what I hope we do here at UnitedWeStrike.com. My closing thoughts for this month: I got to spend time with people I really care about. I was born and raised in Hawaii, and I went back for a visit this past week. And I got to spend time with people I really care about. And I really did try, because I love them, to talk to them about things I've learned through shows like this and through the shows I do with the experts I have on my show, to share with them the information that I've learned. It is not easy. It is difficult to do that, especially with people that you feel so emotionally attached to. But I think if you care about someone enough, if you love someone enough, talk to them. Talk to them about GMO foods. Talk to them about fluoride in the water. Talk to them about chemtrails. Because if you care for them, you're going to help try to save their lives by informing them. That's what we were talking about earlier: educating yourself, informing yourself. Help inform others. That's how we win against the New World Order. Because they, if you don't teach or help teach them, will die, perish, or their offspring will not be fruitful because of the GMOs making everyone sterile. So my closing thought for you, our audience, this month, is to talk to the people you love in your life and help them to understand that it is not fantasy, a conspiracy that these evildoers are conducting on them. This is reality. And there's always this, my closing thought, and always this only one, and everyone here knows this. But before we get there, I forgot. My website is nwodor.com. You can hear my show on Wolf Spirit Radio the first Saturday of every month, and always here the second Saturday of every month on United We Strike. Join us here next month. We'll have another great group of hosts and guests. On a housekeeping note, please, folks, hosts here at United We Strike, help promote the show so we can grow this audience, so that we can help educate more people around the world. And if you have ideas or friends that might want to join us here at UnitedWeStrike.com on our marathons, we have some openings. Please send me your ideas. On that note, until next month, folks, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Death to the New World
Order.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
United We Strike.